Welcome to Real Crusades History, the complete history of the Crusades series. Part 1, The Rise of Islam and its impact on Christian civilization. Episode 9, The Arab Conquest of Spain, 711 to 715. In 709, King Witiza of Visigothic Spain died. Though his sons vied for the crown, the nobles, who by tradition chose the king through election, selected Roderick, a capable general, grandson of the former king Kindaswinth. Witiza's disgruntled sons appealed to the shifty Count Julian, who held Quetta as a vassal to the Arabs of North Africa. Julian believed he could use these former princes in his grand plot to bring the Iberian Peninsula under the control of the Arabs. For some time now, Julian had been communicating with Musa, the Muslim lord of North Africa, urging him to begin the conquest of Spain. Julian offered his fortress of Quetta for the transport of Muslim cavalry. Julian himself led Arab troops in a raid on Algeciras Bay. Shortly thereafter, Tariq, the governor of Tangier, led 500 men in an extensive raid along Spain's southern coast in 710, dragging many Christian captives into slavery. Despite North Africa's increasing aggression, the Visigothic regime showed little alarm. Roderick seemed convinced that the Arabs were interested only in plunder and slaves, not in conquest. Early in 711, Roderick even led his army north to put down a Basque rebellion and also to quell an uprising by Aquila, one of Witiza's sons who had raised an army in Catalonia. Musa saw his opportunity. On April 27, one of his highest-ranking generals, the Berber freedman Tariq, landed at the Rock of Gibraltar, called Jub al-Tariq, or the Mountain of Tariq. With him was some 7,000 men, who moved into Quetta on ships belonging to Count Julian. Julian established a base at Algeciras, while Tariq attacked and crushed the local Visigothic forces. Writing of his initial success to Musa, Tariq requested 5,000 more troops, for Roderick was now hurrying south from Pamplona with his army. Musa sent the additional men at once. Roderick's host met the army of Tariq at the Guadalete River. On July 19, a battle ensued that would determine some 800 years of Iberian history. Relatives of Witiza betrayed their fellow Visigoths, switching to the Arab side in the middle of the fighting. Witiza's camp wrongly believed that the Arabs had no intention of remaining in Spain. The Visigothic troops were scattered. Roderick must have been killed in the fighting, for he was never found, although Berber warriors located his beautiful white warhorse in a nearby swamp. Following the battle, Julian conferred with Tariq, urging him to press north and attack what remained of the Visigothic defenses. Julian stressed to Tariq the unpreparedness of the Visigothic kingdom to fight a serious war, since the Visigoths had lately been engaged in little more than petty internal squabbles. Tariq had received no authorization from Musa for the total conquest of Spain, but he agreed with Julian that now was the moment. Without sending word to Musa, Tariq dispatched his lieutenant Mugaith Arumi with only 700 cavalry straight to Cordoba. Mugaith succeeded, routing Cordoba's garrison and conquering the city. Thrilled with this victory, Tariq wasted no time. Leaving behind little more than 1,000 to hold the south, Tariq marched with his army straight on Toledo, the heart of Visigothic Spain and the royal capital. Tariq had believed he could win, but he was amazed at how little resistance he encountered. The local Jews established contact with Tariq and acted as guides, or betrayed fortresses to the Arabs from the inside. Most of the local peasants simply fled. What remained of Roderick's camp gathered at the city of Merida. Toledo itself was virtually deserted when the Muslims arrived. Tariq allowed his troops to run wild, sacking the houses, palaces, and churches. What few inhabitants remained were reduced to slavery, while the Visigothic crown treasure became spoil for Tariq's coffers. Among the booty was a magnificent marble table, originally brought to Spain by Alaric after the sack of Rome in 410, and before that, taken from Jerusalem by Titus in 70. The primate of Spain, Archbishop Cindered, fled to Italy. It would be 375 years before the Christians of Spain recaptured Toledo from Islam, but on this day, the power of the Arabs seemed unstoppable. Tariq wintered in Toledo. In spring 712, he crossed the Guadaramas and entered the northerly plains which would one day become Castile. He marched past Burgos to Umayyah at the Cantabrian foothills in the most northerly reaches of Iberia, slaughtering every Goth in his path. Meanwhile, Musa had learned of Tariq's victories and was outraged. He believed Tariq intended to take all the glory for himself and thus arrived on the southern coast with a massive force of 18,000 troops from Yemen. Musa captured Sevilla. In 713, Musa sent his sons, Abdul Aziz and Marwan, to mop up the eastern Mediterranean coast, capturing Antequera, Granada, Alicante, and Cartagena. By May, Abdul Aziz was back in Sevilla, from where he marched west, subduing the territory that is now Portugal. Through all this, the Visigoths could offer little resistance. As Julian had predicted, they could not handle the brutal efficiency of the Arab and Berber forces. The last Visigothic holdout of Merida fell at last to Musa's army on June 30, 713. Every church in the city was looted. Those Visigoths who could escape fled into the wilderness. Musa dispatched Mughayth al-Rumi to Damascus, where he announced officially to the Caliph Walid that nearly the whole of Spain had been subdued to Islam. Musa then went on to Toledo, and when he met Tariq, he beat him across the head with his riding crop, cursing him for insubordination. Despite this public display of hostility, Tariq and Musa were reconciled. In 714, they marched north together. Tariq attacked Zaragoza, but the local Christians resisted fiercely, but finally succumbed to Tariq's bombardment. Tariq then mopped up what would become Aragon and Catalonia, Huesca, Lerida, Tarragona, and Barcelona. A local noble, Count Cassius of Navarra, converted to Islam and was made a vassal. Musa moved on to Astorga, where the Galicians submitted to him. Munuza, one of Musa's most trusted men, was named governor of the Asturias. The Christian Chronicle of 754, written by a Christian living in Spain in the second generation after the Muslim conquest, leaves a vivid description of these events. Musa himself, approaching this wretched land, across the Straits of Cadiz and pressing on to the Pillars of Hercules, entered the long plundered and godlessly invaded Spain to destroy it. After forcing his way to Toledo, the royal city, he imposed on the adjacent regions an evil and fraudulent peace. He decapitated on a scaffold those noble lords who had remained, arresting them in their flight from Toledo. Thus he devastated not only Hispania Ulterior, but Hispania Superior, up to and beyond the ancient and once flourishing city of Zaragoza, now, by the judgment of God, openly exposed to the sword, famine, and captivity. He ruined beautiful cities, burning them with fire, condemned lords and powerful men to the cross, and butchered youths and infants with the sword. The chronicler also adds, while he, Musa, terrorized everyone in this way, some of the cities that remained sued for peace, under duress, and, after persuading and mocking them with a certain craftiness, the Saracens granted their requests without delay. When the citizens subsequently rejected what they had accepted out of fear and terror, they tried to flee to the mountains, where they risked hunger and various forms of death. The Saracens set up their savage kingdom of Spain, specifically in Cordoba. At this point, some 3 years had passed since Tariq had first landed at the Rock of Gibraltar. In that short time, the Arabs had captured essentially the whole of the Iberian Peninsula, the bulk of the territories that would one day be Portugal and Spain. Had they encountered a more formidable political structure, such an achievement would have likely been impossible, but fortunately for the Muslims, the Visigoths were fractious and unprepared. Tariq and Musa's heirs would one day be defeated by a new breed of Spanish Christian warrior, hardened by centuries of resistance fighting against the Muslim invaders. But for the time being, the Muslim conquest seemed irreversible, with Tariq and Musa at the height of their careers. But how quickly fate turns. Caliph Walid summoned Tariq and Musa to him in Damascus. They left Musa's son, Abdulaziz, in control of Spain, and went off to report to their master. By the time Musa and Tariq arrived in Damascus in 715, Walid had died, replaced by his ill-tempered brother, Suleiman, who resented the brilliant conquerors of Spain. The new caliph had Musa flogged, stripped of all his wealth, and sent off to Arabia to die in impoverished exile. Suleiman next revoked Tariq's freedman status and returned him to slavery. The following year, Suleiman had Abdul Aziz assassinated while at prayer in the mosque newly commemorated in Sevilla. By the summer of 716, a new governor had been assigned to Spain, Al-Hur, from Africa. It was Al-Hur who made Cordoba the capital of Al-Andalus, the Arab term for the Iberian Peninsula. It seems bizarre that only months after their great victory, the conquerors of Spain were either tortured and killed, or humiliated and enslaved by their own leader. But such was the turbulent nature of Umayyad politics. Despite the overwhelming success of the Arab conquest, a few pockets of Christian resistance survived in the northernmost mountains. It was from these remote outposts that the Christians would begin the long task of reconquering their country. The Arab conquest ushered in an era of extreme violence that was to change Spain forever. Historian Roger Collins says that the Arab conquest created the conditions for a state of almost permanent warfare in the Iberian Peninsula that put a special emphasis upon destruction and the display of dead enemies, with a lively slave trade as an additional incentive. Thanks for watching. Please join us next time for episode 10 of The Rise of Islam and its impact on Christian civilization, when we explore the Second Arab Siege of Constantinople, 717 to 718. In a future episode, we will look at Toledo and the beginning of the Christian Reconquista of Spain. If you would like to support Real Crusades history, please make a donation using the PayPal link in the About box.